Welcome to the Attitudes Podcast. This podcast is the brainchild of Attitude Foundation and Northcott to chat about attitudes about disability. In 2021, the University of Melbourne published a nationwide survey on Australia's attitudes on disability, which will be the focal point of our season 1. I'm your host, Angel Dixon. I'm a person with disability. I dedicate my time to furthering the inclusion of people with disability. I'm a model and the former CEO of Attitude Foundation. In an effort to bring life to the numbers in the survey, each week I'll be joined by current and former board members and one friend of Attitude Foundation to discuss one of the survey's findings. Today I'm joined by Emma Bennison, and we'll be discussing the topic that 61% of people agreed that people make fun of people with disability. Welcome, Emma.
Thanks for having me, Angel. I'm in Nipaluna, Hobart, and I am the chair of the Attitude Foundation, which is a huge privilege. And I'm also an advocate. I am Chief Innovation Officer at Life Without Barriers, which is one of Australia's largest service providers, disability service providers, but human service providers as well. And I, in another life, I'm also a singer and a songwriter as well.
I don't think that's in another life. It's in a
weird
it's a coexisting space.
I don't get to open.
You do all these things all at once.
Yes.
The reason we're doing this podcast is because of the Attitude Matters survey that came out some time ago, that obviously Attitude Foundation has a vested interest in anything that has the label attitude on it. We've got something to say about. And Emma, today we're talking about the topic of the survey, which is 61% of people agree that people make fun of disability. And I'm so excited to hear what you have to say about this particular topic.
Well, I had the opportunity to kind of, choose which topic I wanted to focus on, which is really nice. And I chose this one for a very particular reason. And it sort of almost slapped me in the face because the same day as I got the email and had to make this decision about which topic, my daughter, who is 16, had an experience where some of her friends were making fun of the fact that she has blind parents. And I just thought, oh gosh, well, it was terrible. And it's not the first time it's happened. It's been happening to both my children since they were very young. But every time it happens, it just makes me feel just sick, really, because I just think, gosh, how is it that happens at all? But particularly, how is it that, these are young people. And I kind of hope that we're doing better in educating our young people about, disability and inclusion and all of those things. And it just makes me sad because clearly we're not doing as well as we might have hoped.
That's, quite an encounter. There are so many things that I'm thinking about, particularly while I'm raising a toddler.
Sorry about that.
Do all those things and be as inclusive in our household as we possibly can. It terrifies me, the idea of Chet growing up and encountering those people and those things. But I mean, that's the nature of life. There are going to be different perspectives out there. How did you deal with it?
I don't think I dealt with it particularly well, actually, when I look back on it. I mean, certainly when the kids were younger, I used to sort of try to give them strategies. I'd say, well, just walk away, or you don't need to have a response. It's okay if you just don't want to engage. That's fine. But if you do, make sure you do it in a constructive way. Try not to get angry because, people are just ignorant because they haven't had exposure to people with disability before. But, she's older now, and I actually just said to her, I said, look, I just want to say I'm really sorry I'm sorry that you had to experience that. And her response to me was, well, isn't it, I should be saying sorry to you because the ignorance is directed at you. And I said, yeah, but you're the recipient of it, and it's purely because you happen to have, me and my husband as parents. And she sort of made a lovely comment and said, oh, well, but I know the truth. I know that you're the best parents ever. And I was like, oh, you want money. but no, she didn't want money. But yeah, I just felt so responsible, even though it's totally not my fault. And I work really hard every day to not internalize ableism. But when it happens to me, it's very different to when it happens to my child, and I have no control over that response, and I just have to watch it and kind of give the best advice I can and be the best version of myself that I can be. Like, that's the only solution, really, I think. But it's hard.
I think that response, as a mum of a small child who was a complete baby newbie, I have done several parenting courses. And I feel like your response was so psychologically on point as well. I feel that nurturing your child's, or even just the person who has received that kind of hit or been the recipient of that hit, nurturing that understanding, that compassion piece, psychologically is really nourishing for them as well. It sort of bolsters them for the next experience rather than triggering any trauma that might be there.
Yes.
So I love that response, just making sure that she's okay and saying, it's not you and it's not me. And it's I think that's fantastic.
That's it.
So other than that very recent experience, are there any other motivating reasons why you chose this topic?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been blind since birth, and I don't know, I've always experienced this. Like, this was not a surprise to me at all that this was rated highly. When I was at school, I went to a segregated school for the first 4 or 5 years of my education, and preschool to sort of year 3, and then I was moved to a mainstream school environment, which for the most part I would say was absolutely the best thing that could have happened for me. But the reality is that kids are cruel, and I did definitely get my share of teasing and bullying and those sorts of behaviours. And I did learn very early on to reframe those behaviours and recognise that actually they weren't really about me. I mean, they were, but they weren't. The motivation behind those behaviours and that need to kind of make fun of people who are different I think is actually a fear response. I think people are very fearful of difference. They're very fearful of what they don't know, of life experience that they don't understand. The simple kind of way of I guess exemplifying that is, if someone walks around with their eyes closed, it scares them because they're not used to it. And of course, what people forget is that when you are actually a person with disability, obviously you have training and you have support and you learn how to, adapt. But that's not really taken into account by society most of the time. And so, I realised fairly early on that, this was a fear response. Didn't make it any less hurtful. It didn't make me sort of immune to kind of wanting to respond to it. But it did sort of give me a reframing so that I could kind of live with it and also come through it not feeling completely unworthy or devalued. Because, I mean, I think that's the biggest danger of this kind of behaviour is that people start to internalise it. I know I've internalised a lot of it. I've internalised more of it than I think I, am probably prepared to admit. So it becomes a part of you. You can't just wipe it away. So I think, it does leave scars, but I think, being able to reframe it and recognising that it's actually more about them than it is about you is a really helpful sort of opportunity.
There are so many things in what you've just said that I'm trying really hard to pick them apart. I think leaning into what you're talking about the coping strategies not being taken into consideration when people come from that fear-based perspective is something that we could probably talk about for a long time. But it's so true. It's, I've watched so many people, you go to those training days or workshops on disability and inclusion, and they're throwing people without disability in wheelchairs and asking them to push themselves around. And I have watched so many people stand up out of those chairs sobbing.
Yep.
And go, they turn to me and they say, "Oh my God, I don't know how you do this every day. I hope that never happens to me."
It just, reinforces it, doesn't it?
That trauma that they're taking on and then the conversation is so hard. It's so much harder to be able to say to them, actually, no, that's not what our existence is every day. No. When you live with this every day, yes, of course, the instant change of someone who acquires an impairment later on or who has it from birth and their family goes through that, of course there's, change and trauma and things that come with all of that. But the coping strategies and adapting to things happens almost instantly.
Yeah.
And it just is what it is. So it is a really interesting piece and something that I think isn't talked about often enough.
I agree.
So I'm really glad you brought that up. Something that I wanted to do is kind of delineate between the two things that I feel are in this particular statistic. And one of them is making fun of people with disability as individuals, but also the phrasing is actually just making fun of disability.
Yeah.
And I wonder what you have to say about that.
Yeah, I picked up on that too, actually, making fun of disability. And I think that's a really interesting phrasing because, if you take the person out of it and you just talk about making fun of disability, is that what makes it more acceptable? I don't know, but I'm just trying to kind of tease it out because I just feel like, is it acceptable for people to make fun of disability? For example, some of our language innately actually makes fun of, maybe making fun of is too strong, but it certainly diminishes disability. People talk about, if you want to talk about phrases like, you'd have to be blind not to know that such and such is happening, or, turn a blind eye to that, or, it's very diminishing. People would not see use of that kind of language as making fun of disability, but the line is pretty blurred, isn't it? Like, where does it stop? So I feel like there is something in that it's okay to make fun of disability because it's something that happens to someone else. It's not something that happens to people that that we need to concern ourselves with. It's just a thing that happens to somebody over there, so we don't have to worry about it. That's kind of the sense I got from it.
There's something interesting that happens too, and I guess it's very impairment based, where some diagnoses or some language wrapped around certain impairments come up more in those kinds of phrases or jokes than others.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think it's a lot of phrases that are associated with particularly, intellectual disability come up a lot. Mental health, comes up a lot. It does seem like there are some impairments that it's more kind of acceptable to make fun of because oftentimes it's assumed, I think the reason is that it's assumed that people who with those impairments are not necessarily able to have a voice and respond, and therefore it's considered to be safer to make fun of people with those particular impairment types. It's really concerning to me that we're even having this conversation, by the way, in 2023, but we are.
Well, I mean, we have to go to that statistic. Like 61% is not a small number. Emma, there's something else that I think we need to talk about when we're talking about people without disability who are making fun of a person with disability or just disability in general. When those phrases, colloquialisms, jokes are happening, there seems to be the assumption that they're not in the presence of a person with disability.
Yeah, well, I think that's what it's predicated on. That it's a little bit like people who rant on social media or make comments on social media and can hide behind anonymity because they don't need to actually put themselves out there. I think it's the same kind of approach where people think, oh well, I can say this because there's nobody with a disability in the room. Well, I mean, I think that the question you have to ask yourself is, well, how do you know? Many impairments are not visible. That's the first thing. And also, I think it's really important to remember that many people, even if they're non-disabled people, they've often got friends or family who are people with disability too. So in both of those instances, they are hearing those comments and feeling, I think, a double dose of disadvantage and despair because they're having to process the comments, which are inappropriate in and of themselves, but then they're also having to process the fact that, once again, they're being reminded that their impairment is invisible and therefore, it's not something that perhaps they feel that they can talk about or and they're less likely to talk about it once somebody's made a comment like that. So, it's just a double whammy of exclusion, really, isn't it?
I feel like I'd really like to go back to some personal stories, if you're okay with that, to give life to some of the examples that we've been discussing. I personally totally agree with you about the people with cognitive impairment seem to be the butt of a lot of jokes. And a lot of the time it's not even conscious.
I agree.
It is just they can just be intellectual-based insults that just are thrown around commonly that kind of, it's cringeworthy when you're a person with disability and you go, oh, you just don't know what you're saying.
No, exactly. Well, I was just thinking actually about what you just said, and it just reminded me. I mean, I've thought about this a lot. I've had the privilege of working with a lot of people with intellectual disability. I'm so glad that I have, and honestly, I have learnt an enormous amount from people with intellectual disability. And honestly, they're some of the people I've worked with. They're some of the most insightful, articulate, intelligent people that I know, and it just makes me so disappointed that this kind of insulting behaviour occurs. And sure, I absolutely agree with you that it's not conscious, but we just don't even talk about it, unless some celebrity, comes up in that context of a celebrity. But we very rarely talk about it. And I don't really get the sense that our society is ready to call people out for this kind of behaviour, which is what I think we need to do, by the way. I mean, it's a little bit like racism or any other form of diminishing exclusionary behaviour. We need to start calling it out, because the behaviour that we walk past is the behaviour we accept. So, we have that responsibility.
My chat with Emma was so robust that we needed a part 2. So tune in next time to hear more from Emma Bennison. Thanks for joining us. This has been the Attitudes Podcast. If you'd like to learn more about the survey, visit the University of Melbourne website or head to the Attitude Foundation website for more information on us. This podcast wouldn't have been possible without Matt Field from the Attitude Foundation and Alex Varley from Northcott. Hosted by me, Angel Dixon, produced by Lucy Griffin, and edited by Simon McCulloch and Evan Munro-Smith.